Hello and welcome to this introductory lesson for Modern History GCSE. What we're going to do today is we're going to look at something that you would be studying in relation to one of the units that we actually study at GCSE, and this is a unit that we do in Year 10, and it's probably going to be the first unit that you actually do when you start studying GCSE History. So what we're going to be looking at today is a lesson entitled Blood, Pain and Pus. Hopefully the picture hasn't put you off. And kind of the aim of today's taster lesson is for you by the end of it to be able to explain the dangers of 19th century surgery through source analysis, which is one of the key skills which you will develop if you do choose to do history at GCSE. I hope you really enjoy the lesson. Let's get started. So to start with, we're going to actually begin by looking at a source, but we're not going to do a proper source analysis. We're going to just kind of have a look and try and pick out some of the things that this picture is showing us. This is quite a famous picture. It's a picture which is in the textbook that we use quite a lot with this unit, and it's showing you an example of kind of Victorian or 19th century surgery. Probably also kind of the type of surgery which happened a little bit before that as well, even in kind of the 18th century, so in the 1700s. But what I would like you to do is have a look at what the picture is showing you and think about kind of what can this source tell us about Victorian surgery, and what do you think some of the key problems were with surgery during this particular period. So it would be useful for you to pause the recording at this point in time, have a look at that source and see if you can just in your head think about an answer to those two questions. And this is very much something that we would normally do in a lesson, so you'd be asked to look at a source and we'd have kind of a general discussion about what the source is showing, and you'd share your ideas with your teacher and also the rest of the class. So pause the video and see what you think. So hopefully some of the things that you've come up with are as follows. It obviously looks quite painful. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 men having to actually hold down this poor guy that looks like he's having something done to his leg. It looks like he's also strapped to the table, which again is not something that you would normally have with modern day surgery. So it's clearly very painful. The other kind of thing that you should be able to pick out, which links in with some of the problems, is that it doesn't necessarily look very sterile, so it doesn't look very clean. You've got the instruments that are just laid there on the table. They don't look like they've been cleaned, they're not in anything to protect them. No one's wearing any protective clothing or anything like that. And weirdly enough, you've also got lots of people who are actually watching, which is a bit strange. And it doesn't look like a very sterile environment, so he's on a wooden table. You know, it doesn't look like somewhere that could be wiped down very easily. So this kind of links on to some of the key problems with surgery that we're going to look at on the next slide. So on this next slide, we can see what the three kind of biggest problems are with surgery at this time. And the first one is pain. The second one is infection, and the third one is blood loss. And they were the things that led to an awful lot of people who were operated on during this period not making it and actually dying on the operating table. And these are obviously the things that had to be tackled and looked at to try and actually make surgery better. And these are the things ultimately we've got under control now, or we're a lot better at getting them under control. And this is why people can have such amazing kind of operations that are kind of so technical and so clever and so complex, and yet they can still survive and go on to lead a very normal life. So these are the three kind of cornerstones that people were trying to work towards and find out solutions to during this period, and obviously we're still doing that today as well. Sorry about the pictures. I try not to get any that were too disgusting. There are much worse that you could find. So on this slide, it just gives you a little bit more information about the particular unit that we've used today to kind of formulate our taster session for yourselves. So this is what you'll be studying just in this particular unit. Obviously, if you look at the other information, which you can find from the other video that we produced as a bit of an introduction to the course as a whole, or you look at the literature that's on there as well, that will tell you about the other units that we study. But when we're thinking about medicine through time, excuse me, when we're thinking about medicine through time, which is the bit that we've chosen today to actually formulate a lesson on, because it's part which is really, really interesting. The main things that you will study are ideas about the cause of disease and illness, right from kind of the Anglo-Saxon period and, you know, from the Middle Ages right the way through to present day. Prevention and treatment of diseases and certain conditions, and we also do a bit of a case study looking at the Western Front, so during the First World War, looking at the injuries that soldiers sustained and the treatments that were offered. And that is amazing, because you look at kind of the introduction of plastic surgery that was used for the first time on the Western Front. So the first nose jobs were actually done on the Western Front with soldiers who'd got facial damage from shells, because obviously they couldn't breathe. So what they used to use chicken bones to actually put up the nose to try and keep the nose open. So some amazing things to do with kind of how far medicine advanced during that period. So hopefully those things sound interesting and make you think that yes, this is something that I might want to do. So if we go back to today's kind of topic and what we're looking at today, which is obviously about surgery in the 1800s, this just gives us a little bit more information. So obviously we can tell just from looking at that first source, and probably also from things you've seen on TV or films and things like that, surgery in the 1800s was not pleasant, not by a long way. It wasn't particularly cheap either. It was very, very painful. It was very dangerous. But it was also very expensive. You did have a very slight chance of actually surviving the operation, but not much. So you kind of think, why would anyone put themselves through it? Okay, and you'll probably think that even more by the time we've looked at some more of the information in this lesson. So surgery was very basic and obviously very bloody. And you can see that I didn't actually talk about the picture that was on the previous slide, but that was a picture of a Victorian operating theatre, and it fits in with what we saw on that first kind of picture that we looked at of that guy being held down for an operation. So this gives us some kind of an idea. If you want to just flip back to that previous slide, that might be quite useful in a few minutes. But you can see on there, obviously, you've got a table for someone to be operated on, you've got the tools, you've got a bloody apron in the background, you've got a sink for someone to wash their hands, you've got various buckets and things on the floor to actually collect blood and any other bits that they chop off during the operation. And then you've got a cupboard at the back that looks like it's got some herbs and things like that on there. And then you've got this kind of viewing area, because a lot of operations were actually done in a public gallery so that people could go and watch the person being operated on, which seems a little bit strange to us. But the thing that should kind of be really shocking is the fact that there is a bloody apron there. There are tools which are obviously not in any kind of cleaning solution. There is blood that's still on that bench, and that wouldn't necessarily be cleaned up before the next person went in to have their operation. So all of these things show that it's not a very clean environment. Obviously hospitals now are completely sterile, they're very clean. They've got to be to actually manage infection, so you don't get things like MRSA and other horrible bugs. If you think, you know, of the COVID infection as well, and the COVID virus. So all of these different types of viruses, the only way that you can make sure you don't pass them on is to keep everything clean. That stops bacteria growing as well, which is, you know, cause of infection. So everything is sterile. That wasn't the case, okay? Surgery had advanced much further than kind of the barber surgeons of the past, where you'd literally go to someone's house and they just chop bits off and that was it. However, amputations were still the most common operation, because ultimately they couldn't repair limbs if they were too badly damaged. So the easiest thing was just to cut them off, because they realised that if they didn't, then they would probably kind of get gangrene, they'd become infected, and that would lead to blood poisoning, which would kill you anyway. Surgery on the actual body or the torso was virtually non-existent, because there were so many problems that were faced, the problems that we've talked about already, that people just wouldn't survive that type of operation. So it wasn't even worth actually trying to do that kind of an operation. People basically were just left to die if they suffered any kind of injuries that were linked to that area of the body, or if any kind of organs stopped working and things. There wasn't really anything that they could do. Now on this particular slide, what you can see is a picture of a Victorian surgical kit. So this is what people would have used during this period for doing operations. So just kind of have a look at that and just think about, what are your impressions of that? Would you want to go into an operating theatre? Remember, you'd be awake and actually look over onto a table and see someone bang that open and start getting out a massive saw and be like, yeah, we're just going to chop your leg off. Let's see what happens. And you're thinking, oh my God, you've not even had anything to actually try and numb the pain. So just have a think about that for a minute and how you would feel, because I know that I would be absolutely terrified. I don't know about you, but I think most people probably would. So this is another source that we're going to have another look at, and this is all about a really famous surgeon who was called Robert Liston. Now, source analysis is a really important part of your GCSE, and is something that you will do with every single unit continuously throughout the 2 years of you studying this particular option subject. Sources can be anything, as you know, because you've done about them at Key Stage 3. And we use a variety of written and also pictorial sources as well. So they're not all written sources. We do look at pictures, photographs, things like that. In this one, though, we're actually looking at a piece of text, and it's talking, as I say, about someone called Robert Liston, who was a top surgeon in London. And it says that he basically amputated a leg in less than 2 minutes, which was kind of a bit of a record. However, in the process, he not only cut the patient's leg off, but he also cut off the patient's testicles. Now, you know, I don't think that many men would be happy if they woke up without a leg and also found that they'd gone missing as well. I'm just guessing, but there you go. He also managed to cut the fingers off his assistant's right hand. Again, he would not be happy. And both of these men died from infection. In the same operation, he accidentally cut through a hospital visitor's coat. The visitor died there and then of a heart attack. So he wanted to try and save one person. He managed to kill 3 within the process of an operation. So some of the questions that we might ask could be things like, what can we infer from the source about the problems with Victorian surgery? What can we infer just means what can we guess from the source about the problems with Victorian surgery? And also, using this source, why do we think that surgery was not a popular option? So again, it might be worth pausing the recording and just seeing if you can have a think about some answers to those particular questions. So hopefully some of the things that you come up with, things that we can guess about surgery from looking at that source, is that it wasn't very safe, that it wasn't very sterile, because obviously people are dying from infection. So it tells us that the operating theatre and the tools that are being used are probably not very clean. It also tells us that the people that are supposed to be the experts probably still have a lot to learn and haven't got as much knowledge as you would want them to have. Okay. It also tells us the fact that someone's dying from a heart attack, that it's a particularly bloody, quite gruesome experience. And although we don't know whether this person was actually, you know, not sanitised but anaesthetised, so they were actually kind of asleep for the operation, you can imagine if they weren't, it would be pretty horrific in terms of pain. Now, obviously, using the source, we can tell that surgery probably wasn't popular because it was very painful and it was incredibly dangerous. Sounds like it was dangerous not just for the person having the op, but also the people carrying it out, and even the people that went to watch it. Although why you would want to, I have got no idea. So on this slide, what we can see is an activity that I'd like you to have a go at. So again, once I've gone through it, it would be useful for you to just pause the recording and see if you can have a go. And basically, you know, we talk about revolutions, and that means a major change in something. So obviously, when we're talking about surgery, there were revolutions within surgery during this period, which saw it advance and become a lot better. And what I would like you to do is, I would simply like you to match up the developments. So you've got multiple developments along one side, and then along the other side you've got the problems, so pain, infection and blood loss, that they helped to actually kind of get rid of so the solutions to these three problems that we've talked about already. So I would just like you to match them up. Obviously you're going to have more than one solution for each problem because you've got a lot more solutions there than you have problems. So have a go at that and see how you get on. So here is an actual bigger version of what was on the previous slide, because obviously I don't expect you to use that because it's too small. So this is a bigger version, so you can use this to actually have a go at that exercise and see how you get on. And then on this next slide we've actually got the answers to that activity, which hopefully you were just having a go at. So see how you've got on, and even if you've not got them all right, obviously that's fine. But there's clearly some really interesting information there about how each of these problems were solved. So have a look at that, because you might find out something that you think, oh yeah, I've had that, I've used that. That's quite interesting to see actually where that comes from and how that was actually developed. So if we go to our final thoughts, kind of after everything that we've looked at, we always try and kind of come up with a bit of a review at the end of a lesson and kind of summarise and look back over what we've done, come to some kind of a decision or agreement about what we think about the thing that we've been looking at. So this is very much obviously about surgery, and I'd like you to think about this final question, which is, how did surgery improve in this period, and what still needed to be done to make it better? Because obviously if we're thinking about how far surgery came, and it started off being like the picture at the beginning, at the start of kind of the 19th century during the Victorian period, and then the bottom picture is obviously of a modern day operating theatre, which is, if anyone has been in hospital, this is what you'll be used to seeing, or you've seen it on the TV and things like that, and this is what we expect. So what are the other things that needed to happen even after all of those improvements that you've just found out about, to actually get to the point where we're at today? I hope that you found this interesting. I hope that you found this useful, and it's kind of whetted your appetite and you're thinking, yep, I would love to go and do that. History GCSE is an option. I'd love to do that for a few hours a week. It's an amazing subject. We hope that you do choose to do it. We would love to be teaching you for the next couple of years. And if you do have, any questions at all, you can ask your history teachers. You can come and find myself, Mrs. Taylor, or you can come and find Mr. Midgley, who's the Director of Faculty. But hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you for watching. Take care, and for now, see you later. Bye.